Okay, so hopefully you'll see. So just going on from yesterday's class, the right mindfulness. It's basically the 4 focuses of mindfulness. So now we have the 8th factor of the Eightfold Path, Samma Samadhi, usually rendered concentration, but it's much preferred to use the word stillness. The right stillness. Now first of all we have, I remember this is from the Mahasachika Sutta. This is the Majjhima 36, and this was the story from the story of the Buddha's enlightenment. I remember the time when my father was occupied, while I was sitting in the cool shade of a rose apple tree. Having passed beyond the 5 senses and free from unwholesome states, I entered abided in the first jhana. I thought, this was him recalling after his ascetic practices and getting nowhere, I thought, could that be the path to enlightenment, Bodhi? Then the realization arose, that jhana is indeed the path to enlightenment. So powerful when you actually translate it that way. The jhanas are a path to enlightenment. So, can you scroll down, please? And now we have what these 4 jhanas are. Having abandoned the 5 hindrances, totally free from the 5 senses. For those of you who know, or many of you know the Palis, we read Chewa Kamehi, that's Kamehi, does not mean the sense pleasures, it means the 5 senses. It means the 5 senses have disappeared. The unwholesome states are these 5 hindrances. Totally, having abandoned the 5 hindrances, totally free of the 5 senses, free from unwholesome states, you enter upon and abide in the first jhana. And the factors of that first jhana, where the mind moves on to the object and holds on to it, the object being the joy and pleasure caused by being totally free from the 5 senses. There is, the object in the jhanas is bliss, ecstasy, incredible pleasure, piti sukha. And as it says in there, vivekaja, piti sukha, which means the joy, the bliss which comes from the seclusion, being away from, separated from, in this particular case, the 5 senses. When people ask where did the insight practice come with these jhanas, it's just indulgent. It's not, because that particular peace and happiness, the joy, the bliss, comes from these bodily functions of the senses totally vanishing. And it's like an affliction, it's like a burden being let go of. You feel free. And it's a bliss of such freedom from the 5 senses. It's so typical when you read cases of people having out-of-the-body experiences that they feel just so free and peaceful and happy and joyful outside of their body. One of the first records of that which I remember seeing, which was fascinating because it was a person who was not a Buddhist, not a Hindu. It was one of the senators in the Australian Parliament who told a story that when he was in Vietnam fighting in that war, that he stepped on a landmine and blew off his legs. He described what happened next. And brilliant flash of light, that was a bomb going off, incredible, unbearable pain, and a second later, in his words, floating above the paddy fields of Vietnam without a care in the world, the most happy feeling he's ever experienced, which is weird when you just lost your legs. He was just actually free, out of body experience. And that's so typical. And this is only still got the mind and the body. In the jhanas, it is so happy. And that is the object there. And where it says the mind moves onto the object and holds on to it, I'm not sure if you'll understand this, but you have that beautiful object of bliss, and there is still, the mind is still holding on to it, slightly, ever so slightly, but any grasping Any doing disturbs the stillness, and basically the object starts to become unstable. You actually move away from the jhana, but then it's so beautiful you get drawn back in straight away. It's what I call a wobble in the first jhana. The mind moving onto the object and holding onto it. Because it holds onto it, it moves back again. It's not that stable. There's still a last bit of doing that. In the first jhana, 5 things are absent and 5 factors are present. When one has entered the first jhana, 5 hindrances are totally absent. And what is present, the mind moves on to the object. That is called vitaka, holds on to is vichara, the object being joy and pleasure, and is a oneness of mind. When you talk about a oneness of mind, both the perception of not being over here or over there, but still, and also oneness in time. It lasts a long period of time. Not just the idea of oneness in space, but oneness in time. And that becomes what we call the first jhana. And sometimes it's difficult for people to know whether it's the first jhana or not. Some of the signs are that you cannot hear sound, you cannot feel the body, you cannot think. And if the thought comes, is this first jhana? It can't be. The mind is not that coarse to have a thought. It's only afterwards you come out, wow, that was amazing, that was incredible, what was that? And after a while, a bit more letting go. You don't need to hold on to the joy and pleasure. You do the final tiny bit more of letting go, and you get to the second jhana, when the mind no longer moves onto the object because it's let go of holding onto it. That's the vichara vanishes. You enter upon the abide in the second jhana, which has trust. This is the word samprasada, sometimes called confidence. To be able to let go, you have to have a lot of trust. Wow, I've got 3 cups of tea. This is amazing, the triple check. Very good. See, I told you, you don't go searching for things. If you go chasing a cup of tea, it always runs away from you. If you sit perfectly still, just like the donkey and the cow, the tea comes to you. See, it proves it. But anyway, the mind moves on to, where are we going? So let's go holding on. You enter upon a mind in the second jhana. You really are letting go totally here. And the sign of that is it has trust. You don't have to do things. Sometimes I've noticed trying to get as many similes from life as I possibly can. Sometimes, because of some bad karma, I have to go into a shopping centre to do something like that. It's usually actually to go to a food court to get lunch when you're late and nothing else is open before 12 o'clock in Perth. And sometimes I'm amazed. I see mothers carrying their baby and a shopping trolley or something, and there's lots of people there, and the baby is fast asleep in the mother's arms. When it's such a dangerous, noisy place, could you do that? I'd be so scared, mother's going to drop me or I was going to bang into something. But a mother, so a baby, trusts her mother so much, it can go fast asleep, no matter what's happening around it. It's a sign of like letting go, born of trust. So here you trust so much, that's the samprasada, sometimes called confidence, that you let go of holding on to, you enter upon the mind in the second jhana, which has trust in the object of this, enough to let go of holding it. You know it's going to stay there, you don't need to keep grabbing onto it. And the unity of mind without any movement or holding, with joy and pleasure caused by absolute stillness. It's called like samadhi jhana, bliss. The bliss born of stillness. Nothing moves anymore. So the second jhana is much easier for you to recognize because nothing moves at all. Like a rock, like a diamond, it doesn't shake at all. It's just there, perfectly still. And the deeper the jhana, the longer it lasts because it's so incredibly stable. Now this is where somebody asks a question, what's the difference between the joy and the happiness of Piti Sukha? What happens next is, because things are still, some things begin to fade away. Just like I mentioned in that Zen monastery, I looked to the wall with my eyes open because nothing was moving, the wall disappeared. From stillness, things vanish. So, because there's no absolute stillness here, things start to disappear. The first thing which disappears is that part of the experience called joy. So you're mindful and fully aware, experiencing a bliss which is purified from joy. You enter upon abide in the third jhana, on account of which no one's announced one has a pleasant abiding indeed, where such mindfulness and equanimity. It's mindful here. Sometimes people think, oh, the jhanas, you're not mindful at all, you've disappeared, you've blacked out. That's not the case, they're not blanking out. Your mindfulness is incredibly strong now. And another simile of these jhanas is like different flavours of ice cream. The first one is one flavour of bliss and happiness, and the second one is much more delicious. And the third one is even more delicious than that. It is the coarser part of the ecstasy, which is this thing they call the piti, the joy, is disappeared. You've got a very soft, smooth happiness. And these are blisses, happinesses that most people don't know even exist. Getting more and more satisfying. And having abandoned pleasure and pain, all the experience of the five senses, and with the disappearance of joy and happiness, pervading from the sixth sense, except for equanimity, you enter upon the abide in the fourth jhana, which has only neutral mental experience remaining. Even the sukha, the happiness, has disappeared. Just pure mindfulness with equanimity. But even though the sukha, the happiness, has disappeared, in another place, so actually this is even more happiness. The happiness, when happiness is gone, it becomes even more refined, more satisfying. And it's even called equanimity happiness. It just gets deeper and deeper. If you want to look at it one way, this is an investigation into the nature of happiness and how refined it could be and how satisfying and beautiful it can be. Just again trying to find crazy similes. When I was young, I loved rock music. As you grew older, you started to appreciate more refined music. You know, like classical music. But even just really, I call it hard classical music, like Beethoven. After a while, I liked even softer ones. I remember one of my favourites was, I don't know, many of you may not know him, Monteverdi. But my taste in music got more and more refined. Until now, you don't really want to listen to music. It's the sound of the wind in the trees is even more refined than whatever any composer can create. And of course, even better than that is the sound of the silence. I don't mean Simon Garfunkel's, but I mean really silent, gorgeous. So just as your taste in music refines, your taste in pleasure refines. When you're a meditator, you actually appreciate the most refined happinesses when things have vanished. So that fourth jhana is equanimity. You enter upon the abide in the fourth jhana, which is only neutral experience, just pure mindfulness and equanimity. This is the peak of mindfulness. Mindfulness can't get any more than this. It's not disturbed. Incredibly bright, no hindrances, nothing moving, really deeply still. Those are four jhanas, the deep, powerful stillnesses. Now before I go further, I'd like to have other anecdotes of these deep meditations, because sometimes people ask the question, do they experience jhanas in some of the other religions and paths? And it is my understanding from what I have read and learnt that these jhanas were actually started by the Buddha. He was the one who said, who discovered these things, and one of the reasons is because it takes a lot of letting go, but a commitment to the happiness of the mind. It's not letting go of all happiness, because too often the people are too austere and ascetic to get into these jhanas. That is one of the reasons why, when the Buddha realized this was the path to enlightenment, he also realized that you cannot attain these jhanas if you are weak, unhealthy, tired. And that is why the Buddha gave up his ascetic practices and started to eat properly, started to look after his body, bathed it, and chose a place to meditate, which was, if you've ever been to Bodh Gaya, a very pleasant parkland by the river, very quiet and serene. I was fortunate enough to go and visit Bodh Gaya the first time in 1972 or 1973. That is very different than what you see today. There's hardly anybody there. The only way to get there was to get to the town of Gaya and just hire a cycle rickshaw for the day. And you got there was nothing there. No place to eat, nothing. Just these quiet sites. Of course, there was a few temples that I should have known about to get something to eat, but at the time, there was hardly anyone there at all. And I could imagine what it was like in the time of the Buddha. No buildings, just a river and a garden. And it was tranquil, peaceful. Always mentioned that this was not an austere practice. In fact, when the Buddha started eating properly and bathing and looking after his body, his first 5 disciples thought he'd abandoned and given up the quest for enlightenment. They left him because they were disillusioned with him. The idea at that time, as it is even these times, no pain, no gain, especially in religious life. So, that degree of austerity is an obstacle. Of course, the first teaching the Buddha gave after his enlightenment, the middle way. And the first of those middle way, Atthakalamatthana Yoga, is practices which tire and weary the mind and the body. So anything like sleeping too much or not sleeping at all, they both make you tired and sleepy. So eating the right amount, not too little, not too much, finding just the right amount so you feel healthy, you feel good. But unfortunately, too often people push themselves, and that's not the way. Anyway, and what kind of meditation? Just to make the point, these jhanas are what the meditation really means. This is from the Gopika Moggallana Sutta. And that was after the Buddha passed away, that Ananda, after he entered through the keyhole, was enlightened, he got some authority. He was the go-to person. And when people wanted to ask questions, because he'd been associated with the Buddha for the last 25 years, and now the Buddha passed away, when people wanted to ask him questions, he was the one to answer them. So in particular, they asked him, well, what kind of meditation did the Buddha recommend? And the Ananda answered, totally free from the 5 senses, you abide in the first jhana. When mind starts moving onto the joy and pleasure and stops holding it, you abide in the second jhana. The fading away of joy, you abide in the third jhana. The abandoning of all mental pleasure and unpleasant vedana, you abide in the fourth jhana. The Buddha only praised these 4 kinds of meditation. So that's pretty clear that that's what the Buddha intended people to do. The meditation which actually leads to enlightenment. And to answer one of the questions or complaints people have, these meditations are so pleasurable, won't you get attached? And this is Madhya Nikaya, the Pasadika Sutta. There are Chunda, this is the Buddha answering these questions to this monk Chunda. These 4 kinds of life devoted to pleasure. that are entirely conducive to repulsion from the world, to things fading away to cessation, peace, realization, enlightenment, and nirvana. These four kinds of life devoted to pleasure that are conducive to enlightenment. What are they? The four jhanas. So if devotees of other sects should say that the Buddhists are addicted to these four forms of pleasure seeking, they should be told, yes, we are addicted to the four types of pleasure seeking. I am. And, for they would be speaking correctly about you. Then some people might further ask you, what benefits can you expect from a life attached to these four forms of pleasure seeking? You should reply that they can expect only four fruits, four benefits: stream winning, once returning, non-returning, or full enlightenment. Those are the four stages of enlightenment. These are the benefits that you can expect from being attached to these four forms of pleasure seeking. So being attached to the jhanas, that's where it leads. Okay, you can scroll down a little bit. Oh, I never actually mentioned about can it happen in other religions? And yes, it can. It does seem to be. But it seems to be the Buddha found this out first of all. Other people can spontaneously get into these states. And a couple of people who seem to be able to do this from historical research was two of the Christian saints, Saint Teresa of Avila and St. John of the Cross. And the reason I say this is because reading through some of their descriptions of what they experienced, it's very hard to get a good translation of what they experienced, because in all translations the translator adds a lot. But it does seem to be that they went missing out. And the main path, which is interesting for anybody who wants to attain this jhana, is that how did these Christians attain that? They surrendered to the idea of God. Surrender to the Almighty, but they did it 100%. What does that mean? They let go of their own will. Basically, that they imagined being driven in a car and letting God take the steering wheel. They were letting go, totally, surrendering. And of course they had the faith and trust to do that. And so many of them would have experienced that first jhana. And if any of you have ever experienced that first jhana, you can understand why they will call that union with God. Incredible bliss, really powerful, more happiness than you've ever seen before. Your idea of yourself totally vanished, you can't think, your body has vanished and disappeared, and also that you can't really move. You're absolutely still. Your will, which defines you, has disappeared. And so many people, if you haven't known or been taught that there's much more beyond that first jhana, second, third, fourth and beyond, many people would feel that that is the ultimate experience. A union with God, a union with Brahma, whatever it is with the Paramatma, if you haven't had more instructions. Powerful, biggest experience of your life. And as, because I've got a funny sense of humor, I often say that as a Buddhist, if you get into, say, a first jhana, you don't get the same respect as you would get in other religions. But in Buddhism, it's just the first jhana. But if you were a Christian who got into the first jhana, you would be made a saint, and they would name schools and hospitals after you. It would be St. PJ's Hospital in Singapore. Because you tell us, union with God. Wow, amazing, you're a saint. But anyway, that's what, you can imagine what it's like. And the most important thing, in those Christians, in the Middle Ages, I haven't seen any Christians getting even close to that these days. But it was the case many years ago that they really did total surrender, 100%. They couldn't let go, and that is why I think these monks and nuns in the time, hundreds of years ago, could manage those things. St. Teresa of Avila, she was levitating all over the place. So in the church, when there was something going on, she'd get into a deep meditation, and said the nuns had to really keep their eyes open and grab her by the legs to stop her floating up into the rafters, which is really cool. So we haven't got any rafters here, but we do have in the centre over here these little bars over here you can hang on to. So if any of you do that, hang on to those and get a ladder up. But that actually happens. So, okay, and this is from the Mahamolukya Sutta, because people ask, can you get another way to get enlightened? Can you get enlightened without jhanas? Because there is a tradition which says sukha vipassana, just bare insight path, which unfortunately is Gomyan. It doesn't exist. Fortunately, these days, you don't have to believe me. You can get the sutras online, especially if you have them in the Pali. You don't have to understand Pali, but just do a word search. No sukha vipassana. Does that word exist anywhere in the sutras? We find it doesn't exist anyway. It was added afterwards. So the thing doesn't exist. There is one path only, and one way to the abandoning of the 5 fetters. I haven't actually talked about the 5 fetters. The 5 lower fetters are what stop you being a non-returner. I don't know how much of that done, but you know the 3 fetters are abandoned for being a stream winner, and that is personality view, the idea there's a permanent essence somewhere, and the belief in rites and rituals will be enough to get you to enlightenment, and skeptical doubt. Those are the first 3 of the fetters. The next 2 fetters are weakened for the once returner, totally abandoned for the non-returner, the 3rd stage of enlightenment. And those 2 fetters are craving, wanting, connected to the 5 senses, and aversion, Kamachanda and Vyapada. And after that, the next 5 fetters are abandoned to make the last transition from non-returning to being fully enlightened. And here we're talking about overcoming the first 5 basic fetters. There is one path only, Ananda, one way to the abandoning of the 5 basic fetters. It is impossible that anyone can understand or abandon these 5 basic fetters without relying on that path. No more than it is possible to cut out the hardwood from a tree without cutting through its bark and sapwood. And probably just like me, when I saw that simile, just because I'm rebellious, I started thinking, what if there's another way to get at the hardwood without going through the bark and sapwood? And I thought maybe you can go through the roots. Just go up the roots and then actually get in that way. Or maybe go through the leaves. But look, it's very clear what the Buddha is saying, that you can't get to the hardwood of a tree except going through the bark and the sapwood. So there's no way, no more than it's possible to cut the hardwood from a tree without cutting through its bark and sapwood, so you can't abandon the 5 fetters. What is that path of 4 jhanas, and also the 3 immaterial attainments, which are based on those 4 jhanas. And also says, while you still do not experience jhana, this is actually, I haven't got the quote here, because this is from, I think, one of the first few sutras, in the first 10 anyway. Anyway, I've got it here, Majjhima 68, here it is. While you still do not experience jhana, the 5 hindrances, together with discontent and weariness, invade your mind and remain. When you do experience the jhana, the 5 hindrances, discontent and weariness, do not invade your mind and remain. So in other words, one of the jobs of the jhanas is actually to get rid of the 5 hindrances. suppressed before, but afterwards they're gone for a long period of time. Now, I've been teaching this for such a long time, and always says that in the jhanas you cannot become enlightened, because your mind can't move, it's too still. But the job of the jhanas is to totally eradicate the 5 hindrances for a long period of time. And also, based on experience, what happens in those jhanas, the data you collect, together with the absence of the 5 hindrances afterwards, is where the really powerful insights come. That time, just after the jhana has finished, the commentaries, the sutras never say this, but it's fair enough, is they call it upachara stillness. Like the neighborhood stillness. In other words, just after the jhana is finished or just before the jhanas. 5 hindrances are gone, that is the time you get insight. But of course, the 5 hindrances go just before you enter jhana and also after you enter jhana. After you've entered jhana, when you emerge from jhana. That's the neighborhood. It's like the doormat. If there was a doormat coming into this hall, you have to go over it to get in, and you also step over it to go out. That's called the upachara. And it is feasible that before you get into jhana, your 5 hindrances are gone, and maybe you can get some insight. But when the 5 hindrances have disappeared prior to the jhana, that's really unstable. And I can't really understand how anybody who has the door open into jhanas wouldn't enter that door, have a strong jhana, and afterwards the 5 hindrances are gone for a long period of time. Just before jhana, the 5 hindrances are stunned. So they can get up pretty quickly. After jhana, they've gone for a long time. And I was always wondering, because Ajahn Chah would never talk much about those jhanas, and some of the people who were studying with him said he didn't encourage jhanas. And I was a bit concerned about this, because he was my teacher. But recently, when I was in Thailand last February, I had an appointment which was cancelled, so I had a free day. And so I took the opportunity to go and visit a monk, a Western monk. He's junior to me, called Ajahn Chai. And he was finishing compiling the English translation of the biography of Ajahn Chai. And to enable to complete that biography, he had to listen to so many recorded talks in Thai of Ajahn Chah, so many of them. And so he was listening to these. I may have heard these talks, but couldn't remember them. And I asked him, he said, some people say Ajahn Chah never taught these jhanas. You've probably listened to so many talks of Ajahn Chah even before you even went there. You've got all the old recordings, some on tapes, on the old reel tapes. Is that true? He never taught jhanas? He said, it's actually not true at all. He did teach those jhanas. He called them apana. It was a commentary word for the jhanas. And I said, what about, what people say, the only place you can get insight, is in the upachara? I said, exactly. But even Ajahn Chah said that the upachara samadhi, the best one to use is that which is post-jhana. That's where people get enlightened. And I was so actually pleased, this is the personal thing, I was so pleased that, what I discovered was in the sutras, is what even Ajahn Chah taught as well. Get the jhanas, after the jhanas, hindrances are gone for a long period of time. And you have this amazing data, which I'm going to probably talk about later on, tomorrow. The data by which you can get real, deep, powerful insight. So that's why this is the path to enlightenment. And you may say, oh, this is way beyond me, jhanas. No, it is not beyond you. You think like that, of course you'll never do this. You say, well, I don't want to get enlightened. Why not? People in the time of the Buddha were stream-winners, right-returners, non-returners, so why not you? It's my stupid idea of equity, egalitarianism. Why not? So anyway, when you still don't experience jhana, the 5 hindrances together with discontent and weariness invade your mind and remain. That's a very powerful one as well. You get the jhanas, you've got full energy, you're not weary. This is what happens. It's ridiculous when I talk about this, but sometimes after you come out of jhanas, even at my age, I think I could give Usain Bolt a run for his money on the 100 metres. Now, honestly, you feel that powerful. No weariness at all. Wow, you can do whatever. Well, I think maybe Usain Bolt might win. But that's how it feels. There's no weariness at all. You're totally energized. And discontent, you're just happy for days. That's one of the ways you can tell if a person's had jhana. Okay, I'm telling you the tricks. Say one of you comes up and says, you've got jhanas. And again, I might still say to you, I'm sorry, women can't get jhanas, only men can. And I look at you. If you really get upset, sorry, that wasn't a jhana. I don't believe it. Of course women can get jhanas as well as men, but I'm doing that to see if you have discontent about what you hear. I try to wind you up, try to make you upset and angry. Because if you do get angry and upset, I'm sorry, that wasn't a jhana. If it really is a jhana afterwards, you can't get wound up, you can't get angry. No way. You're just so happy, so content. People can say anything to you. And it just doesn't affect you. That's a good sign. That's why when you get the jhanas, the discontent and weariness don't invade the mind. Now also, this is the Anguttara Nikaya. You can't see the A there. This is in the Anguttara Nikaya. This is a collection of suttas according to 5 hindrances, 4 noble truths, 8-fold path, whatever. So the 8 there is a group of 8s in here somewhere. And this is Anguttara 8, Sutta 81. When you have no jhana, for one deficient in jhana, the cause for seeing things as they truly are is destroyed. This is so common. The cause for seeing things as they truly are is called yatha bhuta, as things are. Yatha bhuta, jnana dasana is wisdom, seeing things as they really are, not as they appear to be, not as you want them to be, not as you're afraid they might be, but things as they truly are, only through stillness, the right stillness of jhana. When you have no jhana, for one deficient in jhana, the cause for seeing things as they truly are is destroyed. When you do not see things as they truly are, for one deficient in such wisdom, the cause for repulsion, turning away from the world and fading away, is destroyed. When you're not repulsed or inclined to disappearing, for one deficient in these, the cause for knowledge and vision of liberation is destroyed. In other words, jhana leads to wisdom, wisdom leads to things disappearing, and when things disappear, you get enlightened. Next one, develop jhana. Again, this is from the Samyutta Nikaya. Develop jhana. When you experience jhana, you can understand things as they really are. And what you understand as it really is, the origin and passing away of form, that's the first khandha. You understand the origin and passing away of experience, the origin and passing away of perception, the origin and passing away of the will, and the origin and passing away of the consciousnesses. How do you understand those? Because those things are what disappears in the jhanas. You've got experience of things vanishing, which aren't supposed to vanish. And lastly, I think it's the last one, I'm not sure. This is from the Dhammapada, verse 372. I quote this so often, it's so clear. There is no jhana for one without wisdom. You use wisdom power to get the jhanas. There is no wisdom for one without jhanas. The jhana also creates wisdom. For one who has both jhana and wisdom, they are in the presence of Nibbana. This is so close. I love that one. What's next? Okay, I thought that was the last one here. So, just summing up. This is the middle way awakened to by the Buddha, which gives rise to vision, to knowledge, which leads to peace, direct knowledge to enlightenment in Nibbana. Enter upon this path and make an end of suffering. And okay, we've got the time. Let's talk about Nibbana. When you know and see thus, the mind is no longer pulled out into the world of the five senses. It is liberated from the wanting. Asana is outflowing. Why can't one just stay inside and be nice and peaceful? Why does the world always pull you out? It is because this outflowing, this habit of always going to look for your pleasures and satisfaction in the world. It no longer flows out just to be. It is liberated from the outflow, the attachment of existence. Sometimes when you start talking about Nibbana, cessation, people think, oh, but can I enjoy Nibbana when it's there? You mean I just have to vanish completely after all their hard work? I can't sort of hang out there for a while and enjoy myself? So, no, you've got to vanish. Cease to be. And people say, I don't want that. The reason is because we misunderstand existence and being. So we're afraid to let it go. I see that very often when I visit people sort of in hospitals or the ICU. Sometimes they can't die, even though they're in great pain and discomfort. Why? It doesn't matter what religion they are, unless they've got some really deep understanding or knowledge, they're afraid of death. They'd rather be and experience pain than actually not be and be free of pain. Your attachment to existence is huge. It is a fundamental attachment. The attachment to be. The idea of you vanishing, disappearing. It's a very hard one to understand, let alone to actually actualize. But what happens is you get these jhanas that you don't exist for a little while. You come back again and say, that was really cool. What am I afraid of? Anyway, it's no longer flows out just to be. It's no longer leaks out because of delusion. It is liberated from delusion. When liberation occurs, the knowledge of liberation invariably follows. So, invariably follows. You can't be enlightened and not know it. When enlightenment happens, the knowledge of enlightenment is the next stage. Next one, you understand. Birth is destroyed, the holy life has been lived, what had to be done has been done, there is no more rebirth or reappearance in any state of existence. Your deliverance is unshakable, this is your last life, now there will be no renewal of existence, for this is the supreme noble wisdom and the knowledge of the destruction of all suffering. We go to the true goal. So this holy life does not have gain, honour and fame for its main purpose, or the attainment of virtue for its main purpose, or the attainment of jhana as its main purpose, nor insight for its main purpose. The main purpose of the holy life is the unshakable deliverance of mind, full enlightenment. This is the goal of this holy life, its essence and culmination. Maybe you will think, the teacher's instruction has ceased, now we have no teacher. It should not be seen like this. For what I am taught and explained to as a dominant discipline will at my passing be your teacher. So, unlike other religions, when the Buddha passed away, he said, I'm not going to anoint a successor. There's no going to be Buddha number 2 or Buddha the 3rd, like Queen Elizabeth II and King George the 17th or whatever it is. So he said, no more leaders. The teachings are your leader. That was a very powerful statement which changed the whole way that Buddha was presented. We do not have any popes. His Holiness the Dalai Lama has got no power. No one has. Because it's the teaching of the Buddha. That is our leader. That is our guru. That is our boss. That's our pope. Teachings, not a teacher. That's very powerful. It means that Buddhism never actually became a hierarchy. People have tried to make it a hierarchy many times, but because of sayings like that, it always fails. You can't have a hierarchy. The Buddha says, no monk, no nun, no matter even how enlightened they are, will be your teacher. The Dharma discipline is the teacher. I am not your teacher. The Dharma and the discipline, that's your teacher. Please remember that. I only just encourage you. I'm your motivator, your coach. Your main teacher is the Dhamma, what you hear, what you see here. So you should live as islands unto yourselves, being your own refuge, with no one else as your refuge, with the Dharma as your island, with the Dharma as your refuge, with no other refuge. For these reasons, those matters I have discovered and proclaimed should be thoroughly learned by you, practiced, developed, and cultivated, so that this holy life, what you call Buddhism, or the Dharma, whatever you want to call it, may endure for a long time. There may be for the benefit and happiness of the multitude, out of compassion for the world, for the benefit and happiness of devas and humans. It's a very wise thing not to give the power to one person. Because if you cut the head off the snake, the rest of the snake goes. When the snake has got no head, every part of it is the head. It's so difficult to stop. We have no leader. The Dhamma is our leader. It's like a virus which has no one origin, so it's infected all the computers in the world. So it's hard actually to eradicate, possible to. So that's like the Dhamma. Infected all the minds of human beings. Some people realize that, and some people don't. They will soon. It's crashing the system of craving and materialism. Very subversive. Anyway, I'll put this in here, which is this is important from the Samyutta Nikaya, because sometimes people, every now and again, they come up and say, the Buddha actually had some more teachings which he never revealed to his close disciples at that time, because they weren't intelligent enough, but they hid them in the Naga realm, or they have been secretly transmitted from student to disciple, secretly until now. Every now and again you come across this Gomaya. But this is what the Buddha said, to stop all that silliness. He said, which do you think are greater, the few leaves that I hold in my hand, or the leaves in the forest? Asked the Buddha. The leaves in the forest, came the obvious answer. Likewise, the things that I know but I have not taught are many, like the leaves in the forest, whereas the things that I have taught you are few, like the leaves in my hand. So he didn't actually teach that much. Many more things he knew which he never revealed. But the reason I have not taught you these things is because they are irrelevant to the holy life and do not lead to enlightenment. So anything which you don't find in the sutras, the Buddha is saying is irrelevant, doesn't lead to enlightenment. He took out all of the rubbish which is not helpful, and just taught what is helpful. So anything which wasn't taught by the Buddha, yeah, it's useful, but not for the purpose of enlightenment. Is that it? Oh, gradual training. Okay, that's a whole different talk which I might actually read out tomorrow. Sum it all up in a different way. But there it is, 10 minutes before we get to tea time. Okay, have any questions? That's very powerful, deep Dharma, but why can't I teach you it? Yes, honey.
What's the difference between the oneness of mind and the unity of mind?
The oneness of mind, the unity of mind. Go to the Pali word for that, it's called ekagata. Eka means one. Aga is what many people call unity, but it means much more than that. Ta is just, what we say in English, N-E-S-S, ness. They get happy in happiness. It turns an adjective into an abstract noun. So ekagata is one aga, ness. And the best way you can understand what the word aga means is in its Sanskrit equivalent. Aga is Pali. The Sanskrit equivalent is called agra. And straight away that should ring a bell that is the Mughal capital of India, where you find the Taj Mahal and the Red Fort, because that was the peak city in the time of the Mughal Empire in India. Agra doesn't mean just oneness, it means a peak, a summit, a capital of experience. It's not just oneness, it's one huge coming together, a peak of the mind. And that is actually, experientially, what happens. You get into, say, a first jhana. First time you get into a first jhana, afterwards you think, this is the peak of experience. You can't have anything more than this. And that's why some people think it's enlightenment, or it's union with God, or union with the Absolute. Sometimes that happens to people in the out-of-body experience. They go into the light, they merge with the Absolute. And the way people experience, remember, that incredible happiness and bliss. Some people perceive it as pure love. Total peace. You don't have to achieve anything or be anything. You're totally loving, you totally disappear. Merging with pure love, pure bliss. It's not two separate experiences, it's exactly the same. So a lot of times people do that and they think that's union with the God. They're not separate anymore, but just one. But one, not just ordinary one huge peak. And the weirdest thing, after you come out of a first jhana, you think, wow, that was amazing, that was incredible, you can't get more than that. But then, next time you go to second jhana, crikey, you can get more than absolute happiness. And you start to wonder, what more is there? And there's more. So that's one of the things, there's many peaks in the mountain range of deep meditation. Until they're all vanished.
So they use unity and oneness of mind interchangeably?
Interchangeably, yes, exactly, yeah. Oneness, unity, it means the same. Yes?
Just now you mentioned that before the Buddha passed away, he never appointed any people who says and says that
Excellent.
Dharma will teach you.
Yeah.
But if you look at it today, like, which is the real Dharma? Because different people emphasize different things. Like some believe in Vipassana, some they emphasize on Prajnaparamita Sutra, some say okay, we really understand the basics. So how do you know that the one is the original Dharma?
Okay, that you can use some logic, some reasoning to find out whether what I've put up here is the original teaching of the Buddha. And that was some research which Ajahn Brahmali and Ajahn Sujata carried out with the help of a few other people like Analayo and Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi. And they used what they called a principle of convergence. They used many terms, like first of all, linguistically. If I read out to you a passage from Chaucer, Geoffrey Chaucer, I think 1400 and something, and then read out a passage from William Shakespeare, and then read out a passage from Charles Dickens, and then read out a passage from Harry Potter, I think you could work out pretty easily which was early, which was later. Language changes with the ages, and the meaning of words changes with the times. An obvious word is the word gay. If maybe in the Second World War somebody said they had a gay weekend, they didn't mean they were homosexual, they just had some happiness and joy. But now if you say you had a gay party, it would mean homosexual. So words change with time, and that can date written texts. And one of the people who did that was this Professor A.K. Warder, who wrote a classic called Indian Buddhism. And his whole task there, he said he wasn't really a Buddhist, he was just an academic, a professor at Cambridge in in Indian studies. And he was an expert especially on poetry, because poetry changes. It's like music changes, and you can date music very easily. And so that he could pretty much date what was early, what was late. So that's one strand where you can date an ancient text by the language which is used. Also you can date it by the geography, because there are archaeologists who can see whether a town existed at that time or whether it was abandoned at that time. So you have archaeological evidence. And then you also have, I forget what the other evidence is, which they looked at, but a whole series of these things which individually they could not prove beyond reasonable doubt that that was the original word of the Buddha. But little by little you put them all together and it becomes a very convincing case. What was the original teaching of the Buddha and what was later? And if you look at that, it becomes quite clear that what you have, in the Pali scriptures, excluding the Abhidhamma, that was clearly later, and even some of the sutta. I already mentioned the Satipatthana Sutta. The earliest part just had two sections in the fourth Satipatthana, on the mind objects or dhammas, and that was just the 5 hindrances and the 7 enlightenment factors. The others were added afterwards. They were not wrong, but they weren't there in the original. They were obviously added after the time of the Buddha. There's a lot of stuff like that, which monks, it has to be Western monks, because if a Thai monk did that, they would be criticized. If a Burmese monk did that, they would have to leave the country. Even when I was in Sri Lanka, I'm well known in Sri Lanka, there's a few Sri Lankans here. I've got a lot of credibility in Sri Lanka. When I went on TV there and said the Buddha never taught the Abhidhamma, many monks said, thank goodness you could say that. We all know that, but we can't say it, because we have to live in this country. You're leaving next week. So sometimes, to be able to tell the truth, sometimes you upset too many people. But, I'm in a position to be able to do that. I'm not really upset. Everybody knows those things, but they don't say it. So it's great we can actually find out what the Buddha really taught. And when you find out, if you really want to see this, it's called the Authenticity Project. Authenticity Project. And Ajahn Sujata and Ajahn Brahmali were the ringleaders of that, and they're very altruistic, so they don't want to print it and sell it. So it's just on the internet, so anyone can get free access to it. But you know that my books I sell. It's not to get the money, it's to get the distribution, get it spread. Because anything for free in modern day is not valued. So even this, what you've seen here, just a a sample of my retranslation of the word of the Buddha. Many of you have asked and will ask, can I get a copy of this? And I can give you a copy for personal use, but I don't want to publish it as for free. I want to sell it simply because then more people will get access to it. And Ajahn Brahmani's and Sujata's Authenticity Project is a case in point. Brilliant piece of work, but you probably didn't even know it existed. It's not on the tables in the back there, like perfectly content, and good, bad, who knows, because it's for free. That's the problem. So anyway, that's how we know it's authentic. Yeah.
Ajahn, would you know what stage you've reached if you have the jhana?
That's a very good question. The stage you reach, say if you've got a jhana, the stage of your deep meditation, it's difficult to not exactly know. Nimittas are very clear. It's beautiful lights in the mind. And frankly, this is anecdotal, and all the years I've been teaching meditation, I don't know how many times people have come up to me, they say, I saw a light, but it can't be a nimitta. Oh, not again. That was a nimitta. I don't know why it is people see lights and think, no, I can't be me, not me. They weren't in it. 99% of the time when people think they've seen a nimitta and they doubt it, 99% of the time it actually is a nimitta. You've got one. Not long, but it was. So why do people doubt so much? But somehow or other, maybe because of other monks say, real meditation is for monks and for nuns, not for you guys. You're only lay people. Your job is just to feed the monks and make them fat. That's your job in life. You do a pretty good job. But no, you're supposed to be walking this path as well. So yes, you can do it. You do get nimittas. 99%, yeah, that's a nimitta. When it gets to the jhanas, I am the toughest examiner of the jhanas because I forget what book it was. I don't get much time to read the books. But there was a book on samadhi and jhanas written recently, and they compared 5 teachers. Who is the most strict and demanding to prove that yes, you have a jhana? Because you can ask one monk and say, yeah, there was. Another monk said, no way. Of the contemporary teachers, the easiest, the lowest standards were from Ayakema. What she said was a jhana was not that demanding. The second highest was Paoksaido. If you tell him your experiences and he says, well, that was a jhana, then that's pretty pretty sure. But the most demanding modern meditation teachers was none other than the one you see in front of you, Ajahn Brahm. In other words, the hardest monk to ask, was it a jhana or not, is me. And I was very proud, I came top. It's nothing. It's a weird little league table, but what it means is if I tell you it's a jhana, if I confirm it, then all the other ones will. I'm the toughest. So I don't say you've got a jhana easily. It doesn't matter. Because you get first jhana, you've still got a long way to go. Just there goes some more. It's good, excellent, well done, carry on. You then go even more. But frankly, the second jhana is the easiest one to recognize. It's just a giveaway. Nothing is moving, absolutely still. And the other little things afterwards, you're really, how can you explain what it's like? The nearest simile, but it's a long way away from it. But it reminded me that sometimes you meet a friend and they've just fallen in love. I said, I've met this girl. Oh, she's so perfect. I'm so happy. Just thinking about her just gives me so much joy. I'm in love. I don't know if you've ever been in love or seen other people in love that are really crazy, but they're blissed out. Now imagine that times 100. That's like coming out of jhana. Oh, that's so nice. It's like being in love, only much more. That's the emotional afterglow. It's huge. So that's how you would understand. If you come up and say, yeah, that was first jhana. No way. And honestly, I'm telling you all my tricks. I shouldn't really do this, but I will look at your body language. Not what you say. You can say all sorts of stuff. Yeah, I saw this beautiful light, and I merged in this light, and I was one with all things. And I was looking at sort of your body language. Have you really got that afterglow, that bliss, incredible joy? That's pretty easy to tell. If you have that, then okay, I'm taking you seriously. That's how you know. Anyway, yes, question over there. Yeah.
So what does that mean and how does that play into meditation?
Sati Sampajanya. Sati is mindfulness, and it's usually used just for awareness. But I did mention it's also used in many places as memory as well. Remembering what you're supposed to be doing. And really, it should be Sati plus Sampajanya. Ajahn Chah would always say Sati Panya, mindfulness, wisdom. Sampajanya is another word for wisdom. Pajanya, you shorten that as a compound, it becomes Panya. Pajanya, Panya, the same thing. Sam means just with. It's with Panya, with wisdom. That's what Sampajanya means, with wisdom. So Sati, you're mindful, but with wisdom. An example of this, just to end up in a nice, funny way, and one of my little funny stories. The story of the wealthy woman in Singapore who went on a retreat in Phuket for 6 or 7 days. And because she was wealthy, and because there are burglars in Singapore, and because she had a guard, a doorkeeper on her house, she told the doorkeeper, "Be mindful, there are thieves. I'm going away for a few days. Be very mindful in case there are thieves." And when she comes back after the retreat, she finds her house has been burgled. And so she's very upset at her doorkeeper. "I told you to be mindful, you stupid doorkeeper, you stupid guard. I've been burgled." And the guard said, "Madam, I was mindful. I did have sati. I saw the burglars going in. And I noted, burglar going in, burglar going in, burglar going in. I saw them taking down your safe. I noted, safe going out, safe going out, safe going out. I noticed them going in again for your jewellery. I saw them going in, going in, going in. I saw jewellery going out, jewellery going out, jewellery going out. The rise and fall of all your wealth. I saw all of that. I was very mindful." That is not the job of a gatekeeper. Not just mindfulness, but with wisdom, knowing the purpose of what your job is. Yeah, be mindful, but be wise as well. So if a burglar comes in, call the police, or do something. That is mindfulness with Sampajanya. Just bare mindfulness is not enough. Mindfulness with wisdom. So, if you see a thought coming into your mind to steal away your peace, you can see it coming, but be wise. What should I do? Or not do? And you can say, make peace, be kind, be gentle, and that should eliminate the thought. Or find the strategic means. It's not just being mindful, it's just being wise as well. Thank you for that question. Yeah?
Also, why
Oh, that's even in neuroscience knows that. If you pay attention, then the memory is very strong. One time you really pay attention is if you think your life's in danger. You have a traumatic experience. People who have a car crash, they think they're going to die. They have flashbacks because it's seared, branded into your memory. Why? Because when you think you're going to die, you are really mindful, incredibly mindful. And that's also one of the reasons why people, I didn't say this, why do people spend all this money going to these theme parks where you have death drops, where you get turned upside down? And you just basically, it's torture in these theme parks, where you do daredevil tricks, strapped in upside down, going really fast, because you have to be mindful, because adrenaline kicks in. You think somehow you're really scared. You get aware, but all with that powerful awareness is also a sense of joy and happiness as well. Why do people drive fast bikes and cars? What's the happiness in that? The fear gives rise to really powerful mindfulness, and with it some happiness as well. But you can do that here without getting into danger. So, when you are really aware, that's when you have good memory. I always had a good memory, so I did well at school without doing much work. I can remember things the teacher said. It wasn't like a photographic memory. It was just a good memory, and for years I didn't know why. It's only when you got into Buddhism you realise that I would pay attention to the teachers. When they were talking, I wasn't daydreaming. I wasn't sort of thinking of, when's the lesson going to finish and I'm going to play soccer. I would actually listen to what the teacher was saying. I had mindfulness. And because of that, I remember stuff easily. That's why mindfulness training for children means that you learn much easier. You don't need to force the mind to remember. You make your mind perfectly still and calm. Not perfectly, that's jhanas, but really still, not thinking, no inner conversation, and you soak up whatever happens. Make it important, like the Emperor's 3 questions. Pay attention, and in neuroscience they say the neural connection is made. You make the links, you make the synapse. That's actually how we learn. Everything is done mindfully, with full awareness. It makes a connection in your brain.
When you say that the memory is just a byproduct of the purpose.
Oh yeah, it's memory's a byproduct, because sometimes there's too many things to remember. And you get lazy in old age. People say lazy, it's like efficiency. So why do I have to keep remembering everybody's name? Impossible. So that's why my trick is when somebody comes up to me, do you remember me? I saw you in Colombo 5 years ago, in that big talk you gave with 10,000 people. People do that. They see you and they forget that, that I'm in the centre of the stage and there's 10,000 people out there. So I always say to them, I remember you. I don't want like offending people. You're the person whose name I keep forgetting. So that's a little trick. So that way you don't have to be embarrassing. It didn't even happen. I saw this, somebody wrote about this, when the first George Bush became President of the United States. George Bush the first. And he went to a reception in London. And there's reporters there, obviously. And this woman came up to him and said, I'm sort of Mary Smith. Who are you? Said it to the President of the United States. And George Bush said, I'm the President of the United States. He said, come off it. Who are you really? It was real. She didn't know who he was. He thought it was his fault because he needed to do a bit more PR before he goes into foreign countries. Well, that was really cool when people didn't know who he was. Anyway, it's now 5:15, so we finish off now. Any more? It's all questions over there. Is there any questions over this side? Round the back? In the middle? Great, let's have a cup of tea. So put the questions in for this evening. Please apologise if I think I'm going too deep with this meditation and jhanas, but it's only because I respect you. I want to treat you like monks. And nuns. Okay, so you may not understand it, but one day you will. So beautiful. Thank you for listening. Sadhu.